I'm all set. Hey, welcome everybody. Thank you for spending a little time with us on Saturday afternoon or evening or morning, depending on where you are. But first, I'm going to thank Timmy for organizing this and putting this together. And then, of course, Audrey for contributing. Um, you're going to learn very quickly the reason why Audrey's here. uh, she is a stellar illustrator, great artist, and a great explainer of what she does. So I had the opportunity to teach a class with her last week, and I'm still thinking about it. I'm just don't know how she got so smart, so young, and so good at what she does. So thank you very much for being here, Audrey.
Thank you.
Our goal today is to talk about portfolio development and career development. They go hand in hand. My theory is, and I'll expand on that throughout the talk, is that the portfolio is the thing that represents you as an artist, as an illustrator. And it is a functioning job interview for anybody that looks at it. And some very basic things that we're going to go over and talk about to how to focus and how to see this to make your experience and to make the endeavor of developing a professional portfolio easier. But first, I have a couple of things I need to do. And first one is this is all sponsored by Visual Arts Passage, and our next enrollment closes 6/12. We have, I think, an absolute stellar educational program, and the goal of the program is to help you develop career. And we have done an exceptional job with it. On the illustration side, we have illustrators all over the world that have gone to our program or make a living from information they garnered from our program. So we enroll 6/12. The next most important thing to talk about is Audrey. And Audrey, go ahead, Timmy.
I want to say one thing. There's a new thing about this semester that if you've taken a visual arts passage class before, and if you're on the fence about returning this semester, because we have guest speakers every semester, traditionally we had 3. You would have 3 from, if you're in the illustration program, there'd be 3 illustrators or 3 concept artists if you were in the concept art program. So this semester, the character design program and the illustration program are sharing guest speakers, which means you get 6 guest speakers, you get all of your classes at the exact same price. We did not change the price at all. We're terrible business people. We had an opportunity and we just wanted to offer the same opportunity at a better value. So it's 6 guest speakers. It's pretty awesome.
And there was a couple of opportunities we had with this, and we kind of discovered, number one, that a lot of the illustration students are very much interested in the guest speakers that come from the concept side, and vice versa. The concept students are interested in the illustration guest speakers. There is a very blurry line between certain parts of the industry, whether it be the fantasy world, or the RPG games, splash art, keyframe, that requires information from both sides, from concept and illustration. And so it's a great value to be able to speak to those people, but I just want you to think about, okay, 6 guest speakers. It's tough to constantly be adding new artists to your program, and to search those people out, get them to commit. We got to pay them. There's a heavy cost to it. The value of it, I think, is incredibly important. From the very beginning of delivering education, being able to see how other people have developed. And we always talk about what they did for education. We talk about what they do in the industry. They show a lot of their work and they explain their path. That becomes just as important as some of the picture making principles that we teach, or the acclimate of drawing and painting. Learning how to develop career. And it comes best from people that have developed careers. And so we put a lot of emphasis on making you aware of artists in the industry and introducing you to them. So I am proud of that, Timmy. I'm really excited that we're adding to the fray right now. So speaking of great artists, Audrey, if you're familiar with Spectrum and you go back a year or so, this is the cover of Spectrum 26. I don't know the exact number of the thousands of people that tried to get into that show, and it is, and I'll talk more about these resource books for the industry, and Spectrum is right at the top of the list, especially with a fantasy slant. But there were thousands of people that tried to get into Spectrum. Many of them didn't. Many of them, and there's, I think there's like 16 or 1700 images in the book. This is on the cover. How good do you got to be on the cover of that book? You got to be special.
Well, and it's Spectrum is cool for me because I'm exactly as old as Spectrum. So the first one came out in '93, my birth year, and
Oh my gosh!
So I always remember how old I was when each one comes out.
Okay,
about that? So,
I'm going to put this in really perspective.
that was so
I
good.
judge that. So
Oh.
Arnie Finner is from Kansas City, who developed it. So I was judging one of those shows when you were being born.
Good. Well, it was a busy day for both of us. So yeah. So we have a multi-generational group here.
That's pretty funny.
But yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the very kind introduction.
Oh well, it keeps going. Which is another funny conversation, is because I saw Audrey's work and just fell in love with it. And one of the things that I love about work is organization of value and shape design. I look at every picture as a kind of a collection of shapes, and Audrey's a master at it. And I reached out to her and said, hey, I'm really interested in having you teach this very specific class that really deals with that at the beginning. I had no idea how young Audrey was when she started teaching with me. But I'm very proud that I recognized that. And this is just amazing stuff. I don't know if this is sketchbook work or if it's just, it's just absolutely amazing stuff.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. It's and every group I've had the pleasure to work with. That was 2019 was the first year I started doing the process skill and craft class, and it really put a language to a lot of things that I was thinking about in the background as I've been working. And it's one thing I really have valued about this group is it puts a lot of things that we're all thinking about into a nice organized approach. And but I really value even the content, even as an instructor. So.
Yeah, I think that anybody, I've taught with a lot of the same instructors for a long time and added and keep adding more. I think we all take the point of view as it makes you a better artist, because you have to really analyze what you're talking about.
Yeah, and we all use what we teach. So.
Absolutely. And that's why I wanted from the very beginning is the best of the best working artists to teach, because I have to, I just got to think their information's just a little bit better. If Gary Kelly's, going to say something, or Audrey or Sterling Hundley or whoever it is that's explaining something, I think that their information, because of what they've done in the industry, is the right information. And I want people that do what people are wanting to do day in and day out. All of our instructors nobody's a full-time instructor, there are full-time professional artists that teach part-time. And I think that's who you should be learning from. So I'm going to keep going here. This is, and Audrey, maybe real quickly, just talk at what parts of the industry do you work in? This is obviously character design.
Right. So I mainly work in narrative, short story, book and comic cover illustration. I would say that's my main genre of illustration that I'm in. And fortunately, through also posting my personal work and continuing to develop myself outside of paid and career-based work, I've gotten other opportunities in packaging, fashion, game art, and animation as well. I wouldn't say that those are my my regular work, but I have gotten lots of opportunities from companies or clients that would like my visual voice from my personal work applied to their projects, and it's been a really interesting road to get to where I am now. And I also very much thank and value the teaching experiences that I've had along the way, because the conversations that I've had with both mentors on one end and students on the other end really make me understand why I do what I do better and make me a better communicator. So I consider myself an illustrator and instructor, but
So that process doc that I'm going to share that later on, but that process doc that we used at the Academy for so long, the simple version of it, I got a great comic artist, Bill Sienkiewicz, that came to the Academy the first time, sent me a photograph of his drawing board the week after he left our program and went back to work in LA with that process doc on his pinned to his drawing board. And he said, "It makes me better, John," because I don't slack in any of the things that it reminds me what I'm supposed to be doing. I really got a kick out of that. And I think it's true. Analyzing what you do and being true to it is the things that help us develop further.
Yeah, just to add to that, one of my favorite things to help, I consider each class that I work with as like a team, and I'm just kind of the elected leader here, I guess. But one thing that I really like to help our groups with is to get each of us to stop walking out of our own circles. If we have tendencies or traps that we fall into in our process work, what are some ways to be aware of some of the challenges that you have, and to take that process that John said and to tailor it to help suit the challenges that you find yourself running into again and again. That's what I've done for myself as well. And usually people have strengths in some areas, whether you're really good at rendering or finishing up polish. And some people are really strong at the ideation stuff and have a hard time tying it all together and synthesizing it. So we really try to cater this to your strengths and the things that are giving you challenges.
Identifying strengths and weaknesses is very important for an artist to be honest with himself. It's something that everybody should assess about what they're doing. I'm going to show just a couple quick things of what I've done or some of the things I do. This is actually from open drawing night. I obviously worked on it a little bit longer. I can't get that far in 20 minutes, but I can get that far in an hour or so. Past, I did a lot of book illustration. I've done a lot of editorial illustration of likenesses of famous people. I like to draw people a lot. It's always been a big part of what I've done and what I do. The other part of what I do is I do a lot of landscape painting, whether it's cityscape, landscape, even figure and environment. But all the skills, the things that we talk about, the foundations, it all comes back to basic picture making principles. And where I've gone with my work, I've been doing this a lot longer than Audrey. I haven't done an illustration in a long time. Well, I take it back. I've done one not too long ago, but that's not my focus. My focus is on the work that I make for myself and I sell in galleries, and which was a whole nother. Basically another career. Some of the similar skill sets, but aimed at a different body, and it had its own process and its own pipeline and its own understanding of how that part of the industry works. This is the last painting I just finished. Big 3 foot by 3 foot square painting, and it's a lot of the same skill I learned as an illustrator. Very different than selling original work, selling paintings. How things look hanging on the wall, the tactile quality. I had to figure that part out. I worked for print the whole time as an illustrator and was never concerned with what my finishes, how they hung on the wall, what they look like. Now I'm very concerned about that. There's a consistency in the tactile quality, whatever you want to call it, but you have to address those things. So enough about Audrey and I. Let's talk about you. And let's talk about the portfolio. And I truly believe the portfolio is really everything. Our industry's a very honest industry in the fact that I don't think there's an art director out there that would hire you because you're good buddies or you're a relationship. Well, maybe relationship. I've never had experienced that, but they hire you for what you're capable of doing and the quality of your work. And that's what exists in your portfolio. I try to tell people to think about the portfolio as a job interview. And it is what represents you. And it speaks to the people that are looking at it. It tells them what you know. And if you have the ability to do what they're looking for. So with that in mind, who are the people that are looking at it? Art directors. Art directors run our industry based from the artist point of view. They determine hire. They even determine a lot of the hire in the studio side, on the concept side. And knowing who the art directors are, knowing what they're looking for is extremely important. Again, this is a job interview. Hopefully, if you've been on a job interview before, the first thing you did was research the company before you went, and know how you and try to define how you could be of benefit to that organization. Well, that's how you need to think about your portfolio. You first thing, you're an artist first, and you have to define what is it that you really love and want to do. And I am a firm believer that want outruns talent in this industry all the time. The people that want to do it figure out how to do it. And so why would you try to compete with somebody that wants to do something that you don't want to do that badly? Choose what you want to do. Your life will be much more content. Your career will be more successful. But I don't think anybody will work as hard. And one of the huge benefits about being an artist is getting to do what you want to do. I would not work as hard doing something I didn't want to do if it was my second choice or my third choice. But doing what you want to do is extremely important in this industry. And Audrey, I know you want to say, again, just interrupt me.
Oh, sure. No, again, to add to that, I think part of living in, so, we're in 2022, we're seeing images and inspiration from so many different places. And I think part of our experience is to also say what kinds of art we appreciate and what kinds of art that we want to be part of making. And also what kinds of art we want to involve in, you know, making money, our profession, and what kinds of stuff is more personal. And I think that figuring out the core of what you want to be doing professionally and organizing that and having that balance is extremely vital, especially in like a world with a lot of different kinds of visuals and creative careers. And that self-awareness is also vital. So
I think it's extremely important to come up with a plan. And part of that plan is what I talked about with the guest speakers, is identifying from how others have done it, and what makes them viable to the industry. And that's really important for you to be realistic about it. So in the portfolio, as I just said, it represents you as an artist. Think of it as a job interview. Do your due diligence, research who buys what you want to do. None of us are completely on an island. We're not so innovative that somebody's already is working in the area that you're most likely. I would like to think that. I think I could gracefully say this without insulting anybody. Nobody is that creative. There's so many other people that have already covered that territory. You bring your personal voice into things into an arena of artists that do that type of work. And so identifying your audience becomes very, very important. And I like to do it, and I'll show you a path that we do in our portfolio class of how we identify a group of artists that you look at as muses. These are artists, I love what they do, and I want to do what they're doing. Maybe not exactly how they're doing it, but there's an aesthetic to it, there's a function to it that you really admire. And then follow that backwards to who they did it for, what publisher, what company, and then ultimately who the art director is. Because that is going to be the person as an emerging artist that you're going to have to convince to hire you to do those things. And part of that is, and I don't want to go too far with this, but I am going to approach it because I think it's important that the way art directors hire artists based on their needs, the needs of the art director. Is this, does this person do good cover art? Do they do good character design? Whatever the function is, that's what they're looking for. And that's where most of their interest is. Most art directors have admitted, even in some of the talks that we've had them come into our program, that admitted to me when I asked them the question, when and how do you align an artist with an assignment? And then they first always come up with say, well, I pay a lot of attention to the industry. Lots of artists are chasing me. And you say, okay, so how does that work? And they said, and it always comes down to this. When I'm reading the brief or the story, the article, I immediately start thinking about what artist is appropriate for that. And then, so my follow-up question is, so are you looking at anything? Almost all of them have said, no. I'm doing it from memory. I'm doing it from the ones I remember, the artists that have impacted me. And so I'm thinking about the notable artists that are in the back of my head. So that if that's true, your job as an emerging artist, your job one is to become memorable to the ones you want to work for. That requires a couple of things. It's got to have the right function. Which has a lot to do with focus, because there's very different functions in different parts of the industry. I mean, just the difference between doing a cover and an interior piece is night and day. The job of the cover is to sell the book or the IP. The job of the interior is to tell the story. The cover's not there designed to tell the story. It's to make you want to pick it up and buy the book, get some interest. It's dynamic. So understanding function is very, very important. And then being able to bring personal voice to that. I am a a fan of Audrey's work. I'm a fan of Chris Payne's work and Dale Stefanos and all my heroes, Gary Kelly and all my heroes. I'm a fan. I don't need to see a signature on their work. I looked at it enough. There's something embodied in their work with personal voice that's memorable. And that's one of the powers of being memorable in this industry, of developing voice, developing something that's kind of uniquely yours. It's easier to remember. And if you have a portfolio that's all designed to meet one part of the industry, to satisfy a group of art directors that are looking for that function, and then it all looks like it's done by the same person, it's memorable. And that's what they're looking for. And you can argue with me all you want, but that's what they're looking for. They want to know what they're going to get. And they want to use people that are doing what they're looking for. You want to add to that, Audrey?
Yeah, absolutely. The big question is like, be memorable. How do you do that? I think from my own experience, I do believe that it's a balance of thinking about the bigger picture, all the things that John said, but also thinking about tuning it out and really, really thinking about the relationship and self-awareness that you have with your own work. And I do feel like a balance of the two and really paying attention to your taste and why you're doing this can help you find your visual voice. I know quite a few different artists I've heard tackle the whole like personal voice question, and I think that it's not so useful to be obsessed with being original to the point where it paralyzes you. I think we're all going to have our influences, and it's all about mixing influences and growing tendencies. And I think that happens over time. And I like to think that your style comes from your personal taste in the world around you, the things that make you stop for more than a moment at a museum or in life, things that make you look, keeping track of that. Also practicing your technical and observational skills. And then the third element in my little equation is also learning to express and draw or create from your mind without being influenced by the technical aspects of things. I think for my life, those three things have been part of my equation of finding my voice so far.
That's perfect. And that is this, man, you just fed me something that was going to be my next topic.
Oh, I didn't even.
Well, because I could guess that was that would be what you were chasing. It's like Audrey's a student of, she could name a lot of different artists. She's looked at a lot of art. That's job one. First of all, you better know the industry inside and out. You better look at who's doing what. But as say you identify three people and you think, oh, those are my muses, I love what they do. Well, you better look at who they looked at. Who were their influences? How did that get developed? And you'll see this chain of relationships with artists, looking at other artists. But the last thing you said about working from memory, and this is the thing this changed my life more than anything as an artist. It's comical how it came to me, because I had success as an artist. My father and I put the Illustration Academy together, and the very first time we delivered the Illustration Academy, this hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was seeing the process work of Gary Kelly, seeing I remember it like it was yesterday. He just started pinning up on the wall all of his process work for a book he had just finished called The Stolen Smile. It was about the theft of the Mona Lisa. And I was in shock. I never saw anybody do that much process work, because I'd never done a book, and he was storyboarding, but all the way back to the original thumbnail ideas, the ideation thumbnails he was doing, which I realized he wasn't looking at anything. He was drawing those from memory, and they were the inspiration for the final image. And they were usually very close together. Everything he did in between was to bring information to the picture that he drew from memory. And I started thinking about, oh my God. And I said something to my father. I feel like really unprepared. I said, I can't believe that somebody, and he kind of laughed about it. And he said, yeah, Gary is really remarkable. And that's what makes him such a great storyteller. And his work is very personal. But he said something to me that, like, I couldn't believe. Number one, this was my father I was talking to, and he should have. I was like, you should have said this to me like 10 years ago. and he goes, oh no, you do that. I go, not to that extent. And he said something that it just kind of brought it all together. He goes, well, that's where voice comes from. And he said it so simply, like it was such a complete answer. And I was like, well, expand on that. And he took it and he said, when you draw from memory, what you're really doing is accessing what you know. You're using yourself as the personal library. You do not have the influence of another artist or a piece of photo reference or anything to influence you. And and he was very direct, and his explanation was terrific. He said, if you stay true to that, what you're doing is learning how to library your experiences and use that as the driver. And if you're consistent and you do it all of the time, and in kind of this really smart country delivery he said, you'll start showing up in your own pictures. Yeah. And that just shocked me. I was just like, and it changed me. It really changed the way I approached doing artwork. And it was so direct. And he said, it's all about accessing what makes you unique. And most people don't put any influence on it. They put another artist in front of them that they're in love with, and they're trying to figure out how they put paint down and all of that. He goes, that's not what makes you personal. That's not what makes you, you. That's what made them, them. And he said, get to the heart of it. Is you got to learn how to access, everything you put into the back of your head. And I thought that was brilliant.
I agree, and I really love the way he put that. And I was actually looking at when you were explaining all that. I was looking at the comment that this one person added in the chat about having experience in an engineering field and not in art, and about asking about a career change. I actually have found that people who do have experience in other fields who come to either a drawing, painting, illustration, picture making space actually come up with some really fresh approaches. So if you don't have experience, basically all the things that John said about personal voice, your career change or things that you've gotten from other fields will actually be a huge influence and could be a really positive asset when you're trying something different.
Audrey, Audrey, I was just thinking what you just said. It's so brilliant because it immediately made me think of an Illustration Academy student that we had a few years ago.
Okay.
Named Jesse Macco, and Jesse was an electrician for KCPL, right?
Love it.
And Jesse now is at Blizzard Entertainment, right, John?
Yep. Just about 2 months ago.
Incredible. Yeah, that's cool.
So talk about a pivot.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, even within the field, sometimes that will happen. But I feel like when you become really saturated by comparing yourself to others, and like John was saying, you're not having that, like, you're not showing up in your own work, like you like in a story. I think that's a lot. It comes from a lot of comparing ourselves, and it almost starts to become a little bit suffocating, where it's very refreshing to step outside and look at a variety of influences, and see what you can bring back to it, and how you can build your library. So I think I think it's really cool that the person who made that comment is looking to make a change. And if you feel intimidated at all, there's so many stories of people who have also done that, who have found their footing. So you're completely welcome, and don't feel like you're behind or anything like that.
Audrey, the best compliment I've received in a very long time was just the other day. Somebody asked me on social media, said, how can I get my portraits to align with my landscapes? They said, your portraits and landscapes they're so different, but they feel like they're the same. And it's like, God, I've been working on that for a very long time. And I really took that as a compliment. It's like, man, glad you recognized that.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Timmy.
Oh, I was just going to say, we have a few questions that I think pertain specifically to the topic we're on right now. So I was just going to throw them out there.
Yeah, please do.
All right. So from Krista, it's hard to really stand out when as you said before, there are hundreds of other people doing very similar things as you. In moments like that, is it a who you know rather than a what you know situation?
Think about that.
Well, let me point something out that, and it's a little bit, I'm talking about illustrators right now, not as much as concept artists, because there's a lot more technical facility that's required to do certain concept art jobs.
And tomorrow we have a character design talk.
Yeah. So, and we got really good concept artists in here to lead the talk. I'm not equipped to answer a lot of those questions, but as on the illustration side, here's what I want you to think about. Every student or emerging artist is always really concerned about their skill set, about their technical facility. And most students, when I originally talked to them, it's the quality of their technical facilitation that's going to make the difference in their portfolio. And I want you to just kind of flip it around. We'll use Audrey as an example. We'll use Dale Stefanos. Look at his facilitation in his portrait work. Look at John Foster, Donato Giancola, people with magnificent facility. So if you think that being a good technician is going to make a difference, put your portfolio together, and somebody that is starting out, that facility took some of those people 20 and 30 years to develop. Your facilitation is going to be at the low end. I don't care who you are. It's not going to be at the super high end of the people that have great facility in the industry. That's a foot race you're going to lose every time. If you put emphasis on the one thing you can control is your voice and something that's unique to you, nobody can replicate that. For one, well, you can fake it, but we can all pretend like we're Chris Payne at times, or all pretend like we want to be Gary Kelly's or whatever, but they're already that. And that might be good in the short term, but it's not going to be good in the long term. But developing the voice side of it and having facilitation that's good enough to explain how you're going to solve the problem. Remember, illustration it has a job to do, and you're either working in two different directions. You're working to be a narrative illustrator, or you're going to deliver a concept. And that pretty much covers most of illustration, except for some technical stuff. But being good at that part of it is going to give, I think it's going to garner you the eyes you're looking for, much more so than the technical side. The technical side, it's got to be invisible. It can't look like it's badly done. You could work in a way, you could take away all of facilitation and work in cut paper or collage or something, and still produce a really good illustration if the idea in the story or the solution is good. That is a part that a lot of people miss. And if you put emphasis on that functional side of it, I think you get there quicker. Audrey?
Absolutely. And I also think it's good to loosen up a little bit. I think it's, to be patient with yourself, along with this ride, because I personally could not have predicted every single step my portfolio, has, every single step I've taken in my career, and also how my portfolio has evolved, is what I mean to say. So I think sometimes we think we have to have every single part planned out in a manicured way, but remember that. Well, I heard in this really great radio broadcast once this idea that we actually come up with better ideas, and like what John was saying about it. Sometimes what we do is more about concept than this idea of polish. We come up with better ideas when we're not so tense and we're not trying to figure out everything. So I do believe from personal experience that being patient with yourself and making a space where you can learn without so much tension is also really important. So.
Well, that brings up two other things, because we were briefly talking about developing and getting there quickly, and focusing on what we know, what we bring to the table. Like if we came from another industry or we came from a liberal arts background, we focus on the picture making skills in our program, and we also focus on the problem solving. And we pair those two things together, a physical thing and a cognitive thing, to make quality portfolio pieces. Being well-read and having a good understanding of the way the world works in a liberal arts background, that is just as valuable as the picture making skills, I think, because it allows you to have more of a voice and a wider breadth of information to solve problems with. So take advantage of that. Somebody was saying something.
Oh, sorry, John. I thought I kept misreading when your sentence was going to end. I apologize.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say we have some more questions.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I know you have a lot to talk about, and we are burning through time. So I thought that we could maybe answer a couple of these, like kind of briefly or however fast you want.
Yeah, there's some good questions. I just opened the queue.
Yeah, but those are really big questions too.
Yeah. I just don't want to throw a wrench in your what you.
Well, it's going to take care of, because I would have said it down the road. I don't have to talk about it later.
Well, here's another question from Ashley. Thanks for sharing your experience and knowledge with us. I have seen a lot of art by different artists that looks similar. What might be able to set one person apart from the other? It could be that this question segues into the barrier to entry, and that is a whole other conversation. I don't know about the last bit, but what might be able to set one person apart from the other? Do you feel like we kind of already answered that?
I kind of do.
Yeah.
And Ashley, I think the emphasis on being super original can sometimes frustrate you. I think it's much more important to make more work and make more images to get to that point where you have consistency and voice, versus trying to stick on one picture and try to make it so original. I definitely think repetition repetition and the act of creation is going to get you to a place where your voice is more consistent, more than obsessing over being original. I have to say that to that question.
Here's another question that I think it's a really great question because it's so simple. But we talk about portfolio a lot and we don't get into the details. We don't always talk about this. Should my portfolio be a set of slides, a blog, a social media account? What should it be? Like, what do you think is a website?
In this world,
I still think in addition to that, having a social media account is probably pretty important.
Yes.
I do too, but I think it's
I wouldn't get sucked into it though.
No, it's not as immediate as the portfolio. The complete portfolio should be your website, because that's the thing that you can control the most. And getting somebody, that's where commerce, I think ultimately happens, is that people go to your website after they look at your social media.
Yeah.
Social media, one of it's using it as a portfolio is difficult. I mean, I battle with that because I put up all these drawings I do, for, in fact, my gallery owner one of the galleries just got mad at me. It's like, you haven't shown a painting in like 2 months.
It totally makes sense, because the way in which you create a portfolio doesn't align with what.
Yeah, you have to, if you're going to use your social media as a portfolio, you better really think about what that social media is projecting. Is it doing what you want to do in the industry? And is there too much fluff in there that is going to turn off an art director? So you better think about it. Let's put it that way.
And then we're going to have a rapid hour.
Okay.
5 other questions. Would you suggest keeping a sketchbook with just drawings from memory only and not observation?
I think that sounds really fun, but I also think it's really cool to combine the two. And I think that no matter how you want to format your sketchbook, definitely make some space for that. But how you want to format it is ultimately up to you. I really like combining things from my imagination with reference and doing a little mix of the two. So
I do too. And I am not, I've never kept a sketchbook. I draw on loose paper all the time. And I do it because I'm a studio person, and I'm always putting drawings on top of drawings and tracing paper on that. And I can't do it very well in my sketchbook, but I draw a lot, and I draw on a clipboard all the time because it's just easier, and I don't have the binding to deal with. And the problem is I have these loose drawings all over the place. I love looking at somebody like George Pratt, his sketchbook is like a piece of art. And Chris Payne, he has sketchbooks that are like finished pieces that are like pieces of art themselves. The one thing you should be doing, either with drawing from memory or drawing from observation or even constructive drawing, it should have a box around it. Some of the time, not always. But when you're putting a box around something, you're addressing design. So think about composition as much as you do practicing your drawing. Practice your composition. That's probably the most important thing I can tell people that people miss out on. Got another question, Timmy?
Yeah, this is a really quick, easy one. I think it's a slam dunk question for you, that we don't really have to go too much into a sales pitch, but should I have a clear direction on my style, target audience, illustration goals before I start a course or mentorship?
No. If you were going into the portfolio class, your skill and craft is at a point and you understand how to do ideation, and you want to start, all of our classes can be taken a la carte, and you think you're prepared to go into a portfolio class, yes. But I want you to have an open mind when you go into the process, skill, and craft class. The goal of that class is to get a process. It's the process of the industry. It's the act of making a picture with an art director. And it's going to make you better. When you learn to get every step right and address every step, you're going to be more consistent and do better work.
Yeah.
In the ideation class that Audrey teaches, you have to think about this. The big picture is to walk away with a method to chase ideas, something, a way to manufacture solutions, something that's going to push you and prod you to be a better problem solver. Is that a fair way to put it?
Oh, totally.
Say that.
Now, I'm trying to, now everybody's like, whoa, they're answering the questions. I got
You're doing great, Tammy. Doing great.
They're like, they're answering the questions I got to submit.
It's the mosquito again.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I think I can answer this question, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Do art directors care if you're using platforms like Squarespace, Wix, or others? Do they even look at that? I'm going to guess that they're not going to probably look at the website that you're like the builder that you're using. If they do, they're just going to notice it. They're not hiring a UX designer. I think they're going to probably be relatively forgiving in that. I think it's important that your website is easy to navigate. It's clear that it is you and that it is your work, the work that they found originally or that you showed them when you met. There should be like no confusion. They are hiring a designer, so it's probably important that the design is nice.
So
That's what I would say.
Timmy, I'm going to add to that a little bit in a very kind of crass way that art directors have said in a number of talks that we've done with them and personal conversations I've had. And depending on what part of the industry, because some part of the industry moves incredibly fast. You're doing an op-ed page for the New York Times, it's a one-day job. If you're working in the comic industry, it moves very, very quickly. You got to produce a ton of work. Book publishing, things are a little bit slower pace, still not super slow, but art directors are pressed for time. They have all kinds of artists reaching out to them, people pursuing them. They're still concerned about production, probably more than they are finding new talent. When they do go to search for new talent, this is a couple of things that I took away that I thought was incredible. Art director said, don't make me read about you. I don't care about reading about you. I don't want to know what you had for breakfast or where you went on vacation. I want to know that when I go to look at your work, that you can do the work that I'm looking for. That's important. Be very direct. On a really practical, all of them have said this, is like, don't start with an artist statement. Make that first thing that you see a group of like 6 or 8 medium-sized versions of your work, of your strongest work that you're pushing to them, where they can see a group of it on one page and they could scroll through it quickly and then they could click on and make the ones bigger that they want to make bigger. But
yeah,
it's all about convenience of time for them.
Yeah. Somebody else also asked, am I wasting money hiring a copywriter to write my whatever? I would say if you have passable, if you have like presentable writing skills, I don't really know how to if you feel relatively confident in writing, I think that's
I think you're going to be okay.
I think you're going to be fine. I don't think you need to razzle and dazzle them with a quirky. I mean, I understand you can hire a clever copywriter that's going to write really compelling copy for you.
It's not going to do you any good if the work's not there.
Yeah, because the truth is nobody goes to your about page unless the images really pull them in, Yeah. So
Audrey, you had something to say about that.
Very simple. And I think this will be the key that'll wrap it up. Art directors are people. You are people. How do you find work? You're finding it the same way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So how much do how do you find work that is in your inspiration folder? You're probably doing the same thing.
Well said, Audrey.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a ton more questions. A lot of them are about finding art directors.
We're going to address some of that down the road. So let's keep going here.
Yeah, let's keep going.
And see if there's something we missed or something that's outside the topic that we're talking about. Go ahead and
I was going to say some of these questions we are totally going to tackle, so we're not ignoring you. Right?
So committing to a direction and a focus, you cannot be all to everybody when you enter this industry. Once you're there, once you get your career moving, you can start expanding. The lowest barrier of entry on the illustration side, or the most common way to enter, is through the editorial market, I believe. It's the easiest place to pursue work. There's editorial magazine. There's magazines you've never heard of before. There's magazines that exist in the doctor's office, at your financial advisor's office, insurance cut magazines. There's stuff that you never see, but there's a lot of work to be had that you can do decent work in. And so that's kind of one thing to be thinking about. A lot of the illustrators that again, I don't know, you probably focus more on the publishing side, Audrey, than you did the editorial. But Dale and myself and Sterling, Edward, Catherine, we all approached the editorial market first. One of the beauties about the editorial market, it's really a very visible market that's seen, and it's easier to move, and it's easy to expand and go in other directions. And editorial and publishing are not that far apart in their look. So they go well together. But again, think about practicality. I think this page is kind of addressing that. Consider your options. I've had students that from Australia, from Europe, from Africa, and I remember having the first conversation with Linda Adair, who's a very good fantasy illustrator, painter, and she's like, well, I can't do it here because there's no work here. So I have to think about developing myself in another part of the world. And again, that's adjusting your audience. I think that art directors in our industry, this part of the industry, well, even on the concept side, are very willing to work with people from all over the world. And I think they enjoy working from people in different parts of the world. But you have to look at your career and seeing what's around you. If you want a full-time job at a studio and you live in a place where there's no studios, you're going to have to move. If you have a timeline that I have this much money that I know I have to be doing, you have to adjust everything based on you and what you need. Maybe working in a full-time position that doesn't fit your needs. Maybe a freelance position doesn't fit your needs. Do you have special needs that, okay, I have to have insurance from a company? I don't know. There's a million factors, but you have to deal with you first. What is it that you have to be realistic with you? And then you got to really learn a lot about the industry, how it functions. All of the resource books are the best place to start, I think. You get to see the art directors, you get to see the companies that hire, you get to see the beautiful illustration work. But dealing with the little things, I mean, Audrey, you probably think of what you do. You're basically running a small business. And you better think about all aspects of it. You can't avoid your taxes for 5 or 6 years. You can't. You have to. There's an economical side of it, an economy side to it that you got to pay attention to. You have to pay attention to just schedule. Are you destroying yourself with staying up all night because you can't produce quick enough or whatever? There's all kinds of practical things that you really need to deal with about working in the industry. Any one of them that you don't address can take you down. And I've seen really talented people fail from some of the dumbest things ever, from just their unwillingness to address something. And you better think about that and try to be smart about it. That's all practical stuff. I don't think we got to talk about that anymore.
Self-awareness and willingness to grow. And
one of the most common things. You gotta learn to work with people. We don't live on an island. We make artwork with other people. You have to learn how to communicate well. You got to have good soft skills that way and develop those. You can't be afraid to, even if you are, I remember calling, I remember the experience of calling my first girlfriend, the girl that I wanted to call and call on the phone. I was so worried about it that her older brother was going to pick up. I had that same feeling calling my first art director. It's like I was afraid in a certain way, and you got to put that aside. First of all, you got to get your work to a point that you can call an art director, or you can contact or send email or send newsletter, however you can temporary delivery that, but it's still that contact that you got to push yourself. If you're shy and you're afraid to do that things, you got to go get past it, because it's part of it and you have to deal with it. Don't write off the soft skills. Be kind to people, always be on time, always never ghost an art director, always confront problems that you have, or if you have to be transparent. You're doing this with the team and you're working for them. You're solving their problem and you're making a piece that fits. It's their timeline, and their budget that they're establishing. You agree to work in that timeline and that budget, you got to do it. You have to deliver. And so being responsible is a huge part of it. And being nice to people and not burning bridges. I promise you that people that you meet, even while you're in school, you're going to be working with later on in your career. Whether it be the instructors or the, sorry, I have this mosquito that keeps coming after me. I'm not insane. I'm not insane. I've been on Zoom forever, but
You're good.
but dealing with the practicality of all of it is very, very important. So
on this topic, somebody asked about, and I was just going to add to this because I feel like this is an easy one. They asked about how do you find and approach art directors for work. I know you're going to talk about how to find them and approach, but somebody had also said, how do you get in touch with them? Practically all of my emails get no responses. The one thing I would say about like emailing is it is a great strategy. Work on your subject lines, do a lot of subject line research, because you got to remember these people get tons of emails. A lot of them probably don't ever get opened, especially if they don't know you. There's a good chance it's going to spam. There's a good chance that they're overwhelmed and they're not opening emails from strangers. And so I would always just say, don't take it personally. We reach out to art, like I reach out, I'm not going to even say, but like I reach out to artists we don't know at all because they're dream artists to have teach with the program. I have to reach out to a lot of them. They're all very busy people and a lot of them don't respond, and you just don't take it personally. You just put, your energy out there and, you hope that good things will come back. And to be frank, like if you're averaging like a response out of 1 out of 10, that's incredible. Like I
had a talk with one of our most successful students, has got a whole bunch of pieces just recently, got a whole bunch of pieces in American illustration and 3x3, and his work's phenomenal. And he was petrified that he's only has a 20% open rate in his email. And I was like, that's good.
20%.
So, but I'm going to expand on that a little bit. And all of the stuff we're talking about, especially with your portfolio, when you start pursuing art directors, there's one major assumption that you got to think about. Well, the two parts. First of all, you got to be good. You got to be, your work has to be at a professional level. Don't expect to get a response back if you're not being objective about your work and your work's not at a professional level. This is real. I mean, there's a reality to it. And secondly, it also has to not be good. It has to be what they're looking for. It has to be something that they're going to recognize and something that they can use with the artwork that they're trying to get to hire people to do. So put all that into the equation. Back up a little bit and think about there's an accumulative approach. It's not just by email. You have to learn to write a really great introductory email with images attached. Develop a newsletter that that you can get people to sign up for your newsletter and be part of it. People send, the direct mail is still used a lot. People send postcards, hard mail. People go to events. They enter shows. They get into, being part of those resource books. Audrey, I mean, hell, being on the cover of Spectrum, there couldn't be a better way to meet a bunch of art directors that deal with the fantasy world. But just being in that show.
Showing up. Yeah.
That's right. You got to show up. I know a number of our students that came to Spectrum for two or 3 years before they started getting work in there. And they were going to the booths of the other other artists, and they were having their portfolios reviewed. It's an accumulative thing, not one thing, and nothing happens. Very seldom does it happen overnight. You have to chase it for a while, and getting the formula right that works for you, you'll get there if you're consistent with it and your work's good. That's the one thing I love about our industry. It's very honest. If you're good, you're going to find work if you approach it properly.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so I'm going to keep going here. Make it easy for the art director. Don't make it, streamline things. Design your website. Design your social media that's easy for them to consume. Only show them work that's applicable to what they, what they're doing and why they're hiring. The importance of showing recognizable subjects. I mean, this is one category that and this happened in the class I was teaching today. The assignment was to do five portraits in different mediums. And this one individual did this really nice portrait, and it looked kind of like a celebrity. That's the kiss of death. If you want to do celebrity portraits, you better show celebrities. You better be showing that you can do likenesses of people that they recognize. Because if they don't recognize the person, how are they going to be able to judge and assess your image? Because they don't know what the person looks like. And so this particular case, this really well done image looked like a bad rendering of Adam Sandler. And I was thinking that was a perfect example to point out that that's why you show famous people, recognizable people. If your portraits are dead on, and that's the type of work you want to get, that's the function of that part of the industry. It's really difficult for art directors to interpret stories that they don't know the story. It's easier if you writing your own stories, you better show something that shows that you're a good storyteller on something that they're going to recognize, because that's when they can really see your storytelling acumen. If you're showing something that's so personal and they don't know the story, it's really hard to identify the storytelling. So show things that are usable and recognizable to the art director. Go ahead.
I would say, even just in the class that I taught before, this comes up a lot. We say, stop. What is your one sentence pitch? And it's just an act to help us simplify, because we're creative and we can creatively come up with a lot of details. But we forget that I don't know if John said this word for word, but we forget that most people who will be consuming or just viewing works of art are not artists. They are objective viewers. They are your everyday people who walk into Barnes and Noble, Target, walk down the street. You're just a regular person. They might not be an artist. So I like to ask myself, if I had no context and I was looking at a picture, what is my one sentence pitch for what it is? And I think
you did that the other night to a student.
Yeah.
And I love, and that's where I said what you were just saying, that you couldn't remember if I said it there or here.
Yeah. So think about. Yeah.
The interpretation of the assignment was confusing, and they were trying to deliver a couple of different messages, lead with one. have one driving subject matter. And that's perfect for what Audrey just said. Make it easy for them to understand. And it's not, again, have non-artists look at your work. The point of view you get from a friend or family member that's not an artist might be more valuable than it is from a really high level artist, because you're going to get what their reaction is, and is it saying what you think it says? And that's extremely important.
We're communicating.
That's right. Does it communicate the message that you're trying to deliver? I used to just have these huge battles with my wife. She would come into my studio and she would say, "I don't get it." I'm like, "Of course, it means this and that." And she'd walk out of the room and I'd think, man, I can't believe she.
Not her
And then I start thinking about it. I'm like, she's right. It doesn't. It's not immediate. And I would go and correct it. She always won. All right. Let's see. The cohesive part, I mean, that's just kind of what we were talking about in voice. If you're showing a function aimed at a group of art directors in one part of the industry, and again, remember, I don't think you can approach the whole industry at once. Pick a lane, choose whatever it is you want to choose, identify the art directors that work in that part of the industry, and design your portfolio for them. You can always expand and build more, have other sections on your website. You can do that. But the one thing that's got to be consistent, it all has to feel like it comes from the same artist. Don't confuse them. And it has to look like it comes from the same artist. I think that's very important. And of course, back to make it memorable. All right, I'm going to keep going here. This was a sheet that Edward Kinsella wrote, because as much as I talk about focus, you need to talk about range. Show that you can do a portrait, show that you can do an interior, show that you can do a landscape, show that you can do a spot illustration. Those can all be in the confines of, for one function of the industry. It doesn't, you don't have to be just a one-trick pony and show, oh, I can only do portraits and they can only be black and white. Now, that worked for Mark Summers pretty well, but it showed that you can have, and it will give you more opportunity. Show that you can do other different things, maybe even different mediums, but it's gotta serve the needs of that part of the industry. Okay, range should not be confused with function. Make it personal. Always make it personal. And then I like that idea that he said, throw away the idea that of what you think an illustration is supposed to look like. That's a really good point. Part of what, I didn't say this earlier, and I meant to, I was going to add on, we got into other questions, but in developing your voice, the two things that I feel that are really required is that cognitive side of the drawing from memory and nurturing that, and then the physical side of experimentation with material. A finished illustration there's no set rules. It has to be something. It can be a number of things. It could be a collage, could be a line drawing with a splash of color to it. It could be anything. And one of the bigger challenges that I think growing artists that are learning, they'll do these beautiful sketches, do these great thumbnails, and then they'll have this sketch in their, finished sketch in their sketchbook or on a loose piece of paper, whatever. And they think that they have to do something completely different in the finish. Like they got to work on it for 1,000 hours and realize this thing that they did in their sketchbook so successfully. So there's a transition there that you have to learn, that there's something in a sketch that might have a lot of energy to it that needs to be in the finish, and trying to hold on to those things that can be, and I think that's what Edward's addressing there. And I think you can be inventive with your finishes and what constitutes a finished illustration. And then of course, take risks. Chris Payne had a great line at the Academy one year. He said, I don't get this. Everyone talks about taking a risk as an artist. And he said, I get that if I was a pilot. I don't get it as an artist. He said, the only thing that's taking a risk is the piece of paper that I'm working on. And so, again, don't be afraid to explore and try to get away from what you generally do. Try other things. So let's keep rolling here.
All right.
Okay, so focus. The traditional illustration is broken up into those first 5 categories: editorial, book, advertising, institutional, and sequential. The Society of Illustrators, Communication Arts, they all jury in those formats. Those are all sections in each one of those resource books. Currently, visual development is another great arena for illustrators to focus in. Designing character for animation is very similar to what a book illustrator does. The visual development process, hell, my favorite visual development artists they were book illustrators before. A couple of them were great editorial illustrators: Peter DeSev, Carter Goodrich, Claire Winland. Learning the opportunities that exist. Right now, the Magic the Gathering cards, very popular with our students and in the industry, some of the best professionals. The fact that a lot of the professionals are going back, they're scrapping the digital approach and they're painting traditionally because the resale of the paintings have become so valuable. And so it's another great opportunity. Had a discussion the other night in study hall about Thomas Blackshear and the success he's having in the Western industry. And a lot of the people from there's so much success going on there, monetary success. There's people from all parts of different industries that are working their way into it. Michael Dudash, Dean Mitchell, the great representational figurative painter, Jeremy Lipke. I couldn't believe he was at the Cowboy Hall of Fame showing his Western work. And I would have never guessed that from him. But those are opportunities that you need to make yourself aware of. You need to know where artists are working, and you got to constantly be looking at something that might be of interest to you. You know, there's all kinds of offshoots of, that I know I joke about it and say that there's like collectible things, like, we all know Audubon, we all know like bird societies, there's bass fishing, there's, golf, people that just make a living doing golf, doing portraits of golf carts or golf courses, premier holes on golf courses, and notable figures that are golfers, sports in general.
There's, also I think about like the draw towards, I think of like some major opportunities like Criterion Collection. And then another sleeper I think people sleep on a lot is like A24, the studio. They do tons of really cool projects with artists. Like they're like a huge opportunity for illustrators.
Right. Well, Netflix is hiring artists like crazy right now. The opportunities keep changing. And when I was going to school, I was looking at a bunch of editorial magazine illustrators. That's still there. But there's so many other things that have taken its place, where there's people make great livings doing with the right skill set. They can make a great living in different parts of these industries. So know the industry and really make a commitment to a part of it when you're starting to one particular pointed direction.
Here's a question, a quick one, John, maybe a really quick one. What advice do you have for those who love exploring many directions?
Well, here's my advice to everybody about working in the industry. And this came from, again, I relate a lot of things from people I've learned from, and I learned a lot from my father. And people would ask him a lot. It's like, well, Mark, what's the best way to get started? How do I get started? His answer, they always thought he was joking, but it was very real. He would always say, the fastest. And knowing, and I see it much more so than he did by all the students I look at, the killer of people's careers is the chase, the amount of time it takes. And so I think the shorter you condense the time it takes to be professional and work in the industry, the better opportunity you're going to have. So focusing on one skill set or one part of the industry first, and then expanding once you get that started. I always joke about that, I said earlier that location, romance, finance are the things that are the killers of people's careers. We go to school and we have a dream to be a professional artist. And then you don't learn anything about the industry most of the time when you're in school, and you got to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to get work, to get work? And we've placed a lot of focus on that in our industry, in our educational program. And I really do believe that getting there quickly, just getting started, is a thing that's going to help you the most. You learn more working in the first few years. I mean, I did, and I started getting work when I was very young. My portfolio, after a year, not one piece, after a year of working, was in my portfolio a year later. And that happened 2 or 3 more times in about a 10-year period. I kept hitting either different quality or different direction. And that happens to every profession. You just keep growing, except for maybe Audrey. She was good when she was 15 years old.
Audrey, here's a question for you that's related to career and probably your personal experience.
Sure.
You think it's better to be a freelance illustrator or an illustrator that is signed with a company, or maybe is like working at a company?
I don't think that there's an objective better. I think that there is better for each individual person. I will say some of my challenges as a freelance illustrator is, hey, you know how everybody had to work, or a lot of people had to discover that work from home life-work balance during the pandemic. Well, that's a lot of what freelance illustrators go through on the regular. It's not just when there's a global pandemic. So there's a lot of personal structure that goes into being a freelance illustrator. If you're not good with that and you don't like that, don't do it.
Would you like life balance?
Yeah. I would say if you prefer working on a team and you like being part of a process, don't go work in a studio. I think if you like working on full images and you think really better when you have a lot of time to yourself and you enjoy more of a studio environment, or a studio as in like a workshop studio environment, you might be better suited for being a freelance illustrator. You're probably going to be many things in your life. You're probably going to wear many hats and have many roles. Look at where you are now. Look at how your family life is now. Look at where your values are now, and how all of those things, all of the things that make up your life, influence your workflow, and the answers will come from there. So to answer the question, it's not better to be anyone. I will say that different personalities are probably better suited for freelance than others. And I think that there's trade-offs with both. So
Audrey, Sterling and I have talked about that at length. We both were very social as young men, as children and teenagers. This sounds strange, but the hardest thing I had to deal with about becoming an artist was learning how to spend a lot of time by myself.
It's the truth, and there's no other way to slice that. Yeah.
And
John, a lot of questions are piling up, and I know you've got a lot that you want to talk about. Do you want me to hold off on these?
yeah, hold off for a minute or two, because
them.
and then I'll get through this part really quickly. This is the document we use in our portfolio development class. This is a product of, you first had a process skill and craft class. That's the physical act of making a picture. You had a cognitive class of ideation and visual storytelling. You pair those skills together to start thinking about I'm going to make portfolio pieces, but the first thing you do is you identify a few artists that are doing what you're doing, want to do, and you chase them backwards. You collect their work and you figure out what venues, that's companies, publishers that they did the work for, and then ultimately who the art directors are. This becomes your audience. You identify the audience you're making a portfolio for. Back to that portfolio is a job interview. These are the people you're going to be interviewing for, and you got to learn about what their needs are. You garner all this information about understanding the industry by looking at these resource books and then going to conventions, anywhere you can get information about the industry. Meeting with professional artists. One of the, again, why we bring all these professional artists in is so you can learn about the industry, learn about where you can fit in and how you need to develop for it. So this is like in a very practical sense of how to think about and customize your portfolio aimed at the audience that you want to aim it at. We have to go through this process before you make portfolio pieces. And three major topics that every one of our classes, and then I think that every individual should be thinking about. And remember this, again, the goal of designing this program, what's the quickest, most efficient way to help you develop a portfolio for the industry? And you have to deal with the skill and craft part, which is dealing with the process. You've got to have enough skill and craft to explain your ideas. Idea can trump facilitation very quickly. Good idea can be executed very simply. So being able to put those two things together, they kind of come from different places, and you've got to be able to use them together in a process. And then understanding the industry at the highest level. What does the industry need? What type of work does this need to be for this part of the industry? Who does what? And ultimately, who the art directors are. I think all of our classes take in consideration these three things. And it's really important to always be addressing. If you leave one out, you're not going to have success, or your likelihood of success is going to be diminished. You really have to address all three and be thinking about them all the time. Our curriculum's laid out for a streamlined approach. Get the skill and craft, learn the ideation, learn how to manufacture solutions, how to get from text to a visual. It's really, really important. And then you work on developing a portfolio, and then you put it into action. In Sterling Hunley's class in career development, our students are calling on art directors. They're pursuing art directors. They're designing their website. They're aligning their social media. They're designing business cards and direct mail pieces. They're learning how to write an email to an art director. They're also learning how to create a newsletter. These are, again, that accumulative approach. But most importantly, you're doing it with the tutelage of, I think, one of the most entrepreneurial artists I've ever met, Sterling Hunley, and a great artist. And he's helping you organize yourself to work in the industry and actually go out and pursue it. Here's our mentors. And I'm so proud of these people, because they take what I've been doing for a very long time with the Illustration Academy, and they've applied it in a contemporary delivery. Now, I have to say that everybody on this page, except for Audrey, was a student at the program at one point. Audrey,
It kind of was like through the vine, you know.
that's right.
Audrey's a wonderkind.
Yeah, but she had some of our instructors as instructors at where she went to school.
Influence.
So I have to look past that.
Audrey, have you ever just like gone up to a piano and just started playing like Beethoven? I could see it happening.
No.
Well, I'm so proud of these people, and I'm so impressed at what they do with their careers and what they've done, and how they help and how they'll help an individual. and the time they put into our students. And I love it. Our illustration, that is a piece of Catherine Lamb's work. That's obviously a piece of Audrey's, Dale Stefanos and Sterling Hundley. They're all super industry successes. Contact with our mentors. And again, each one of these classes and the relationships are designed to help you with one of these skill sets. There are all kinds of other push-ups and sit-ups maturing as an artist that you have to do. The amount of practice that you put into your drawing, the experimentation that you do with materials. I call those exercises, push-ups and sit-ups, understanding perspective, understanding color, learning compositional rules. We discuss those things and we point them out. We give you literature of how to be better at it. Somebody can go through our whole program, all 4 classes in a year. That's probably not going to be enough time to develop as a professional, depending on the level that you came in. Some of our instructors, some of the students who come in with a really high skill set, somebody like, Marion Martinsick or Louis Garver that's in our program right now, Elijah that you just had in your class, and a number of others. I don't want to miss anybody because there's been phenomenal students that go through our program. They got there real quickly. They're winning awards when they, while they're still in the program with us, because their skill level was very high. They're applying those big grouping of information, of how the process works. They're identifying themselves through their portfolios and aiming it to the right art directors. And they're doing that by connecting with, like Audrey's class. She meets on Saturday for 3 hours live with the students. She does lectures, she does demonstrations. I saw the most beautiful demo you did last week. It was gorgeous. And she works one-on-one. And then in the middle of the week, we have another 3-hour live meetup. It's called Study Hall. And I love that. And it's where our illustration students and our concept students come together. I get a kick out of, here's a great example of the crossover. The students that come into the program, they're wanting to do, the illustration students that are focusing on the RPG games and working in the fantasy realm. And then they figure out that Lake Hurwitz is teaching in the concept side. He's in study hall all the time, and he's one of the art directors there. And it's like their most important person just became Lake, because that's who they want to work for. And getting information from a group of 3 or 4 artists in our study hall, and I refer to it as triage. We're helping you with your assignments. And then we use Discord for the rest of the week that we communicate with our students on a daily basis. Sometimes student or instructors, I think Audrey says, I'm going to be available on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons at these times. Get your work in there and I'll do critiques of all of your work. And so you have communication all week long, and it really does work as a mentorship. You get to know your instructors and you get a huge amount of contact. In a 10-week program, you get 23 3-hour live events. And that's a lot. And
I was just thinking about what your dad said about get there as fast as you can. And I thought, oh, that's funny. I've never really thought about that. But you and I basically built our company around that.
That's pretty much it.
Because I was thinking, I was like, wow, we really have just like, it's just, you just floor it with the information. And especially this next semester, more than any other semester, I was just thinking, as you were saying that, I was like, 6 out of the 10 weeks, you're going to have a guest speaker now. So majority of weeks, you're going to have a live class with your homeroom, and you're also going to have a guest speaker. And then you also have the option to do study hall. It's pretty crazy. And I remember you and I looked at like the opportunities that were available at the time and it was like, oh, that's all really expensive. And I don't know. I'm not going to comment on like the quality of it, but the value is different,
Well, I kind of said it at the beginning, the goal of the education that I wanted to be a part of. I taught at a major art and design, private art and design college, and was really disappointed in how they dealt with their illustration program. They didn't engage with industry. They didn't teach the right skill sets, and they wasted just a huge amount of time on things that weren't that pertinent. And what I wanted to do is develop something that was taught by standouts in the industry of what they do every day in working in the industry, and the right information that is going to help people develop career and to get you there quickly, because it is the killer of artists chasing career, is how long it can take. And the quicker you can do it, the more likelihood you're going to be doing it for the rest of your life. And that's our goal. I mean, this is Audrey, I don't expect to see you, becoming an accountant anytime soon, or doing something different than being an artist. Or me, certainly me. My time is up and I'm doing something different at this point. It's a lifelong journey, and it's the thing I love more than anything about artists that have put the effort in and focused for a long period of time, that focused on developing themselves, is the payoff is unbelievable. My father commented to me when all of his non-art friends at 65 years old, most of them were successful financially, and they were all stepping off. They were playing golf, or they were traveling, they were doing whatever they want to do. That's when he became the most engaged. He had started this second career as a painter, and he was so engaged to the end of his life. And he said something to me that, he was talking about, he couldn't believe the amount of interaction he had with people. He said, even when he was really busy as an illustrator, when he was in his 30s, his mid 30s, and he was, at the peak of his power as a published illustrator, he said, when later in life, he was still that engaged. And think about it, you work your whole life to get good at something, very different than a physical, like an athlete who works really hard to get good at something and then they decline. You get better as an artist. You keep getting better. You never stop getting better. And I thought that, man, that is the ultimate retirement. He got to do exactly what he wanted, to make the pictures he wanted to make, and was, till the day he died, he was engaged with a group of people that made art. And I know that's maybe way down the road, and maybe something you haven't thought of before, but as a lifestyle, it's pretty damn good. I've always made a good living as an artist. I know some that don't. I know some that make a better living than I do. But as a lifestyle, it's pretty rewarding. Anyway, do we have a few questions we can go through, Timmy?
Yeah. Do you want to? Well, how much do we have? Because we might.
You know what? We're way into this, so let's just deal with the questions. I think I've said.
You want to do a lightning round of questions?
Yeah, and that's the way we finish. I brought more material to talk about,
great.
but there's no reason to. Let's just ask questions.
I've had a few people ask about like signing up already, and I was just going to say, if you do sign up, please use discount code draw more. You'll save $50. That's for first-time students. So if you have any questions, though, just email at hello@visualartspassage.
Before we bring a question in, let me show a couple more slides that
absolutely
really make sense.
Let's do it.
Process, skill, and craft. This is what we focus on in that class. Remember what I was talking about, the thumbnailing and the draw from memory? That's what I was referring to. But this is the steps you go through in your picture making and communicating with an art director. You come up with an idea, pen hits paper, and you show your first thumbnail. Thumbnail, that's a thumbnail right there. That's a thumbnail of an idea of a picture that I'm going to attempt to make here. It also looks like, I forgot I had examples here. This is not finished or polished, and all of these were drawn from memory. And it's kind of overkill. This is student work. A professional might show 3 or 4, but it's the beginning stages of the picture making. these are very polished. These are more value studies. And you go from black and white, value study, color studies, finish. That's what we want you to acquire. That's the physical aspect. All of the things about learning perspective, learning simple color, learning basic design theory, it's talked about in this class. And putting it in, organizing it in that process, it will make you a better artist immediately. Learning effective lighting, learning how to shoot photo reference. Those are all things that we deal with in that class. Second class is this, that Audrey teaches, learning a way to problem solve, not wait around for an idea, not aimlessly search, but come up with a mechanism. Starts with word stack, starts with idea generation. And what you're doing is you're getting from text to visual. You know, the idea of writing down as you're reading a story, the most important topics, and then coming back to your word stack and just focusing on what's the best visual to represent that word. And then those visuals start to become your subject of your illustration work. And it's much more complicated, and you can cross-polarize ideas, you can do all kinds of things, but this is a way to generate solutions. And then you go into a portfolio class, you put those two skills together, and that's what you're dealing with. That's all I needed to say, Timmy. I just wanted to really focus on the last class. Then the last class, the career class, you're putting it into action. You're actually calling on the art directors. Again, there's push-ups and sit-ups. Not everybody comes in at the same place. People got to work on their drawing. They got to work on their design abilities. And you're going to go through those push-ups and sit-ups. However long it takes you to get that at the professional level, these are the big topics that you have to pair to. All right, ask some questions, Timmy.
All right, this is a lightning round. Here's a question. Everything you're sharing is so great. So mentorship for portfolio creation and being part of a community is fantastic and comforting. Here is where some of the disconnect is, and how do you problem solve it? Finances, first jobs. Do you assist the artists in your community to garner resources? Like how do you
in our portfolio class, we're an open book. Dale uses some of the industry access and helps people find art directors' emails and locations. I mean, we help you identify that. Most importantly, we're helping you with your pictures. We're helping you with the artwork itself, designed for the audience you're making it for. But you know, I think that our community is pretty deep.
Yeah,
I talk with artists consistently that I dealt with 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, students that are developed. Even among some of the instructors, we're talking about, oh man, what's the best way to price this? A community is support. And we have alumni channels in our Discord. We're already addressing that stuff. Mm-hmm. I promise you'll get to know your instructor. You'll get to know the people in your class, in your classes, and that community will serve you and will take you forward.
And John, you and I talk about this constantly. I mean, especially during portfolio months, which aren't happening anymore. But when you're talking with students, it's the most common excuse, and I'm not saying excuse like it's not a legitimate excuse, but the most common reason that people don't take a class or they're not pursuing their freelance career is money, time. They have a steady job. Mm-hmm. And I have been in that situation where I have the steady job. And that was a really difficult time in my life. Personally, it was one of the most difficult times in my life. And what I will say is if you have a steady job that you don't love, but you're doing for the security of it, it's kind of like cliff jumping to go to into freelance or into what you love. But the only difference is every year that cliff gets a little higher. and pretty soon it will get so high, it is honestly not safe for you to jump off of it. And truly does get scary. And I did it I jumped off of it pretty early and I was terrified. I was really terrified because I had so much self-doubt. And I know that is, I want to say that self-doubt is maybe one of the most common issues that we see with students is self-doubt. And it's just, don't do that. Don't do that.
I honestly think, Timmy, that reality and common sense are all brought into the equation. Dale and I talk with students about that all the time.
Yeah.
And you telling somebody to jump off a cliff, I don't want to give that information. I want to let them make the decision when they feel it's right.
I should say
will-
cliff
I
jumping.
will-
I'm talking about cliff jumping. I'm talking about cliff jumping into a lake.
I know, but I've never, the way I like to look at
No.
it Timmy, is that I don't want to tell you to jump off a cliff. I'm most of the time telling people not to jump off of the cliff, to make sure they're ready.
Yeah.
And make sure that they got all of the things in place. Once they're ready and they have, it's like telling Miriam to jump off a cliff's not a problem. Because she's never going to go down. She's going to go up.
Right.
And because she was so totally ready.
Yeah.
So there's a right time, and you need to get advice from people from the industry to do that. Audrey, you got something to say, I can
I
tell.
do. It very much has to do with what both of you are saying. I heard this once about opportunity cost, and you know what that is, like economics and stuff, but it's like we oftentimes think about that cliff like, oh, how hard is it to make a change, and how hard is it to jump into a new industry, but there's also an opportunity cost of staying in something that you don't like. There's a
cost.
There's a cost of not doing something, and that cost gets more the more you sit with it. Even with like moving, if you think like, I've always wanted to move somewhere else, I've always wanted to change, that cost gets more the longer you stay. And I think that's what Timmy was saying without like the
I'm from the Midwest. So I'm thinking like
visual
Ozarks.
propelling off a cliff.
I want to give preface. I'm thinking Ozarks cliff jumping into lakes, and then also realizing we've got people from all over here. They don't know what I'm talking about.
But I agree with what you're saying, that opportunity cost, the invisible one that we don't think about.
If there's one thing of advice I could give myself at 16, it would be do exactly what you want as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time. Just do it exactly what you want. Whatever you need to do that, do that.
Yeah.
I've always felt like maybe more so than most, I've tried things and open educational programs. Hell, I've been a freelance artist my whole life. I've never really had a job, and except for making art. And so I'm used to that. I'm used to that fear. And there's a part of that, I feel confident in myself that I can get to where I want to go, but I know that I better damn well research it before I make a big change. I put my kids through college doing this, and I've lived a pretty good life because of all of it. But there's times I've wondered, like, what the hell am I doing? This is insanity. But you find a way to make it work. You have to, and the more educated you are, the more well prepared you are, the better opportunity you're going to have.
Is that hour 20 of portfolio reviews?
Yeah. What the hell am I doing here?
Why did I partner with Timmy?
Okay, another question.
Yeah, we got some more questions. Maybe the fast answer to this one: how can I get an idea of the pay associated with various types of freelance illustration jobs?
There's a really great book called it's the Graphic Artist Guild.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources.
And then there's a lot of that. I think any one of our instructors or people, we've had a lot of people come in as guest speakers talk about it and say, well, this is what this paid. And, there's some things that, when you're starting out, how do you price your work? Well, there's a moving target to all that, but there's some logic to it also.
Yeah.
And to hear it from artists that have been through it is very, very helpful.
I think if you're respectful and you say, can I ask a personal question?
Right.
A lot of people will be pretty honest. You kind of got to read the room on that. All right. What is the best way to find an illustration agent? Is it the only way to work with larger brands?
No. Like, first of all, if like there's some part of the industry. Oh, go ahead. Audrey.
I was gonna say not in 2022, but some areas, yes. And I would say for children's book illustration, that would be one.
And they're a different type of agent. They're not the agent that is going to be representing you in the advertising world. They're very different.
Yes, some no. Yeah.
Pardon me?
I was gonna say some yes, some no.
Yeah, but most of it, like Richard Solomon, couldn't help you at all as a children's book illustrator. And so people that wanted to do children's book that were in his stable left and got different children's book illustrator agents. Editorial, I mean, it's like, why would you have an agent as an editorial illustrator? It's real easy to figure everything out and do it yourself. And why would you pay somebody 25-30% to do something that you can do very, very efficiently? And plus, I think it's really important for somebody starting out that they act as their own agent for a while, just to know what an agent does. And I mean, somebody new to the industry and said, well, I get an agent. What's your agent going to do for you? You need to experience some of that on your own. That's my theory anyway.
All right. I appreciate how much you've spoken of the importance of voice and person style. In terms of networking and connections, would you have any recommendations on building one's connections? I will say, find communities and join them and participate in them. We are a community. There are a lot of other communities. Do that. What do you guys think?
I think that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You first.
I heard it once put that it's not exactly what you're asking, but very much in the same vein, that the thing that kills dreams is lack of community and not lack of ideas or lack of skill or creativity. So I would agree with that. But where to find that? I think classes are good. Clubs are good. Online groups are good.
Come to our free night of drawing and ask questions to that group. I mean, they're really top-notch industry professionals. There's top-notch industry professionals that are drawing with us, that are part of that aren't on the panel.
I always think of the 10-year-old that draws with us, and I'm not going to say her name, but every artist, like some of the biggest artists in the US now, like know who she is. That's so funny.
That's
so funny.
And Tenny, I've traded artwork with
$1.
I've traded one-to-one artwork with her.
Yeah. She hasn't given Visual Arts Passage $1.
So another thing one other thing I'm gonna say about that, about community and learning and tracking art directors in social media. If you start with the resource books and you're following the artists and you follow the artists on social media, it's almost a practice that almost every illustrator that does a piece of artwork that's not NDA'd posts it on social media, and then they link it and they tag the art director. Think about that on your social media. It's like you start following an artist and you can see who the art directors are and you can get their contact information that way. It's a little stalkish, but it works that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. There is that like line of like not being creepy, but like with Illustration Isolation, which is a free drawing event, and we'll often draw like fan art of like a TV show, John I Love or whatever. And I'll include tags to like the actors or the directors or whatever, or the show. And I'll tell the audience, I'll be like, tag them. Like enough art gets made tonight that if enough people tag them, these actors or these comedians or whatever, they'll like reshare your work. And like very few people actually follow through on that often. And I'm always surprised by it because like the lead actress in like Top Gun like reshared everybody's artwork that like drew her. And I was like, that's so cool. And I was like, think about, I don't know. I mean, I'm not talking about like how to become an influencer or something, but
Class.
that's a different class.
Yeah.
Anyways, we've got so many more questions, John. I think we should, I'm sorry.
Let's pick two more and we'll be done.
All right, cool. Well, you guys keep talking. I'm going to pick out the best two. All right. Okay, I've got a filler question for you. All right.
I'm ready.
How can I find what's lacking if I'm getting positive portfolio reviews from people like you and art directors from Wizards of the Coast, but I'm still not getting work?
Ooh.
That sounds personal. I mean, directed to me, like, why am I not getting work? And you said my work.
Oh, I thought you meant like that sounds like a personal issue.
No, it sounded like, hey, John liked my work and I'm not getting any work. Well, first of all, I always try to be really honest to the point where I apologize to people. If I'm going to say something negative, I always try to say, okay, this is all about being better. You got to treat yourself the same way. You got to compare the people that are doing the work. You better have it all over your studio. Look at the work that you want to be competing with. And then objectively look at your work and say, is it doing the same thing? And is it doing it as well? Most of the time, it's composition. And I really think that's the separator at the high end. There's all kinds of great finishers in the industry. The people that are the best composers are the ones that end up doing all the great work. So try to look at it as objectively as you can. And if it's something I've said to you that you don't understand, reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk to you about it more.
Sometimes it's a matter of time too.
Yeah, and it's again, Audrey, would you agree? It's an accumulative approach to the industry. It's going to the events. It's showing your portfolio. It's entering the shows. It's sending the emails, the newsletters. You got to do it all, and it's not going to happen overnight.
It's never one thing. It's always a combination.
Right.
And it's my personal belief that if you stick with it and you want it and you're doing a combination of those things will line up. I think it's that. So
Well said.
I know it's hard to believe when you don't see it happening, but I will say this, those times where things aren't lining up feel really long. But as soon as they start lining up, usually art directors, if they work with you once and it's a good experience and you've gotten positive feedback, you're kind of in for a lot of these places, and people,
right,
they come back to you. So sometimes, I won't say all times, it only takes one jump in, but I understand that the space in between can feel long.
One other thing about that particular venue, Wizards of the Coast, is a lot of the times that Lake said this just recently in study hall. He said that a lot of the artists that progress to the Magic cards have done other things inside of the Wizards of the Coast properties, and they've come from different places, and it's kind of like a scale. They start here and then they end up doing the Magic cards, which are some of the primo work. So don't just look at the one place you want to work there. Look at other things that they produce, whether it be comics, books, or whatever.
Yeah, I totally agree. As a person that has started his own business, in partnership with John, and I've done it on my own as well, nothing happens as fast as you think it will or should often. And it is
only bad stuff.
Yeah, the bad stuff happens like that. No, but I was just thinking, and somebody told me this when I was having a really bad day, and I was just thinking like nothing is happening, it's not happening. Like, it's just a failure. Like I was just telling myself, I had this narrative, everything is failing because nothing's happening at the pace I wanted. And the truth was nothing was failing. I just wanted tremendous success really fast. And they said, you know, your business or your dreams, it's about time in the market, not timing the market. And time in the market, it's like not very sexy.
Yeah.
It's the Warren Buffett investment strategy that nobody does, but has made
He
people
wants to do.
nobody wants to do. It's not appealing, but most people, when they fail in an industry, it's usually not like a burn down in flames thing. It's like they lose the energy and they drop out. And
Oh man, you just said it, Timmy.
yeah, my opinion is like, just figure out how to stay passionate about it and stay in the game.
The thing that I had to discover, and all artists have to discover, and I remember being really dejected and my father giving me this pep talk, and he said, you know the people that I'm around, all these successful artists. He says, we've all failed more than we succeeded. And he said, the most successful artists fail more than they succeed. Even on doing one painting, you'll be up and down, you'll have emotions about it.
Yeah.
But we're all, you don't get all the jobs that you want. You get a portion of them, all that you can do maybe. But you get rejected and you fail more than you succeed. It's part of being in this business. And that's just how it is. You got to learn to accept it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really great ending question to end on.
Yeah, I think so too.
Audrey, do you have anything you want to add to it?
Yeah, I mean, I really like that we are ending it with that topic. I'll say that, you know, even as a kid in other subjects, things always took me longer to do. And I would say one of the more, it was really frustrating. And a lot of times I've heard people describe themselves as like, oh, I'm a slow learner, things take me longer. And more of my life was defined by not that, but just not stopping, not like the speed. It was just the consistency. I think consistency is and habits are more important than anything else. So
there are still a lot of questions. I'm going to tell you right now, if you have any questions that you want answered, email them to hello@visualartspassage.com, and we'll get back to you. We'll write you a note.
I have something else I want to say just at the end. So first of all, Timmy, Audrey, thank you. To give you just a little snippet, this last week I taught a class with Audrey, and I was absolutely blown away with her ability to interpret the students' needs and to get there so fast with solutions of how to be better, how to make the work better and address the needs of the students. I think all of our instructors do that really well. If you have interest, I can't tell you a better place to be around a bunch of really good artists. And I always take myself out of that equation. I look at my faculty as like, these are my heroes. And it's a good thing. It's a good place. It's a healthy place, and it will make you a better artist for sure. It will help your path to becoming a professional. So
classes close June 12th, and discount code draw more. Yeah.
Enrollment closes June 12th.
Enrollment. I'm sorry.
And you said June, it's July 12th.
I actually made a note of that on this piece of paper because I saw that at the beginning of class, and I was like, that is my birthday. And I know that date, and that's not the right one.
I was on such a roll, and I blew it.
No, so if anybody wants to know, it's July.
So this will be my review of Timmy. Timmy, you had one thing.
I had one job, and I ruined
no,
it.
I saw that date at the beginning, and I actually wrote it down to tell you guys at the end.
All right.
No,
everybody, thank you so much for spending the afternoon. I hope we said some things that were helpful.
Thank
you. If you have questions, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to assist. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.